My daughter threw $10,000 at me after selling my villa for $1 million and said contemptuously, "Go pay for a hostel in some dump outside the city." She had no idea what I had done a few days ago. Will she be able to escape the destruction she brought upon herself? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The front door exploded open with such force that the crystal chandelier in the foyer trembled. "Dad, we need to talk. Now!" Lila's voice cut through the afternoon silence like a blade through silk. In the winter garden, Wendell Hargrove continued his methodical watering of Dora's beloved orchids, the gentle stream from his brass watering can, never wavering despite the volcanic eruption of his daughter's arrival. The click of designer heels on marble grew louder, more aggressive. Papers rustled ominously. "Dad, I know you can hear me." Lila stormed into the glass-walled sanctuary, her face flushed with determination and something darker, desperation. She clutched a thick manila folder against her chest like armor. "Don't you dare ignore me!" Wendell's back remained turned, his silver hair catching the filtered afternoon light. A droplet fell from a pristine white petal. Another. The ritual continued. "These documents..." Lila slammed the folder onto the antique potting table, sending soil particles dancing through the air. Papers scattered like autumn leaves, real estate evaluations, market analyses, legal forms. These numbers don't lie. An orchid petal, disturbed by the violent gesture, drifted downward in slow motion. "Dad, enough!" Her voice cracked with frustration. "You're 68 years old, living alone in a 6-bedroom house. It's senseless." Finally, Wendell's hand stilled, the watering can lowered slowly, deliberately. When he turned, his gray eyes held the calm of a man who had weathered many storms. "Good afternoon, Lila." His voice carried the weight of old-fashioned courtesy. "I wasn't expecting you." "Don't," she gestured wildly at the papers. "Don't give me that polite grandfather act. Look at these numbers. This house is worth $3.7 million. Million, Dad. You're sitting on a fortune while we... This house is part of our history, Lila." Wendell set the watering can on its designated shelf with the precision of long habit. "You were born here. Your mother and I... Mom died 5 years ago." The words erupted from her with volcanic force. Tears gathered in her eyes, but they seemed more of rage than grief. "It's time to move on, not hide in the past like some museum curator." Wendell's shoulders straightened almost imperceptibly. His hands, still steady at 68, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. "Your mother's spirit lives in every room of this house, Lila. In every flower she planted, every..." "Spirit?" Lila laughed, but the sound held no humor. "Dad, you're living in a shrine. Tane and I can barely make our mortgage payments. Emma needs braces. We're drowning while you water dead flowers. These orchids are not dead." His voice remained level, but each word carried more weight. "They require care, attention, respect. Like your daughter should." Lila stepped closer, invading the space where he stood among his wife's treasures. "When did you last ask about Emma's school, about my work, about anything that matters to living people?" Wendell's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He reached for a fallen evaluation sheet, scanning the cold numbers that reduced his lifetime of memories to market value. "You want to sell my home?" It wasn't a question. "I want you to be practical." Lila's voice rose to match the desperation in her eyes. "Move to a nice senior community, 2 bedrooms, modern appliances, activities with people your own age. Use the money for something meaningful instead of maintaining this monument to the past. I will not sell this house." The words fell between them like a judge's gavel. Final. Absolute. Lila's face cycled through emotions: shock, fury, calculation. When she spoke again, her voice carried a dangerous edge. "Then I'll do it myself." She began gathering papers with sharp, violent movements. "I have rights." "Rights?" Wendell's voice remained steady, but something flickered behind his glasses. "What rights would those be?" "Don't play naive, Dad. I know what Momswell says. I know about the trust. I know that if you're declared unfit to manage your affairs..." She let the threat hang in the air like smoke. For the first time, Wendell's composure cracked. His hand moved protectively toward a framed photograph of Dora among the orchids. "You would do that?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. You would have your own father declared incompetent? Lila paused in her paper gathering, but only for a moment. When she looked up, her eyes held no trace of the little girl who once climbed into his lap for bedtime stories. I would do whatever it takes to save my family. She stuffed the remaining documents into her folder with mechanical efficiency. Think about it, Dad. Really think. She reached into her purse and withdrew a set of keys, spare keys to the house, and threw them onto the potting table with a metallic clatter. I won't need these anymore. Her voice had gone flat, businesslike. I'll be back Monday with proper documentation. The click of her heels retreated across marble. The front door slammed with finality that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. Wendell stood alone among scattered soil and displaced orchids. One perfect white petal lay on the floor at his feet, its edges already beginning to brown. He bent slowly, carefully, and picked it up. In the sudden silence, only the soft whisper of the air conditioning remained, circulating the ghosts of harsh words through rooms that had once known only love. The next morning brought no peace. Wendell moved through his Saturday routine like a man walking through fog. Breakfast on the terrace overlooked the sprawling gardens where Dora had once spent her mornings. But the newspaper lay unread beside his cooling coffee. The business section held no appeal when his own world had shifted so dramatically. The phone had been ringing since 7:30. Ring, ring, ring. He'd counted 14 calls so far, each more insistent than the last. On the 15th ring, during his second cup of coffee, something in the persistence broke through his resolve. Hargrove residence. Wendell, what the hell are you doing? Lila cried all night. Tane's voice exploded through the receiver without preamble, without courtesy, without even the pretense of civilized conversation. Wendell held the phone slightly away from his ear. Good morning to you too, Tane. His voice carried the weight of decades spent in courtrooms and boardrooms. Perhaps we could start with courtesy. Don't deflect. The younger man's voice cracked with emotion, whether anger or desperation, Wendell couldn't determine. You're a terrible father. Your own daughter asks for help, and you just slam the door in her face. Asks? Wendell set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. Or demands? There's a difference, you know. She's your daughter, your only child. Tane's voice rose higher, losing control. How can you be so cold, so heartless? Wendell gazed out at the garden, where sprinklers sent arcs of water across the perfectly manicured lawn. Everything in its place, everything cared for. Tell me, Tane, he said quietly, when was the last time Lila called simply to ask how I was feeling? This isn't about, Tane stumbled over his words. You're a wealthy man, and we can barely make ends meet. Then it's time to learn to work, young man. The edge in Wendell's voice could have cut glass. You're the head of the family, aren't you? A pause. When Tane spoke again, his voice carried a different kind of desperation, the sound of a man whose bluff had been called. Look, we both know what this is really about. You're lonely, you're hanging on to that house because it reminds you of Dora. But she's gone, Wendell. She's been gone for 5 years. My wife's name is Mrs. Hargrove to you. Each word fell like ice. You can't live in the past forever. Tane's voice cracked completely now, revealing the panic underneath. Lila's worried about you. We're all worried. Living alone in that big house, talking to pictures. I think this conversation has run its course. Wendell's voice had gone dangerously quiet. Wait, don't hang up. We're trying to help you see reason. The trust fund, the inheritance, all of it's just sitting there while we struggle to pay for Emma's school, for basic necessities. Goodbye, Tane. The dial tone hummed in Wendell's ear like a meditation bell. He sat perfectly still for a long moment, processing not just the words, but the desperation behind them. This wasn't simply about the house. It was about money they felt entitled to, money they'd clearly been counting on. His own daughter, his son-in-law, circling like vultures. Wendell looked down at his hands, still steady, still strong, still capable of building the life he'd worked for decades to create. Hands that had signed contracts, built a business, held his wife during her final illness, and planted every flower in the garden she'd loved. Hands that would not surrender what he'd built to the entitled desperation of those who saw his lifetime of work as their inheritance. For the first time since Lila's visit, Wendell smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Monday would bring surprises indeed. Wendell had been bending over scattered documents when the house phone pierced the afternoon quiet like a fire alarm. Once, twice. On the third ring, he straightened slowly, his back protesting the position he'd held, while reading through real estate evaluations and market analyses that painted his beloved home in cold, mercenary numbers. The papers told a story he didn't want to read, detailed assessments of every room, every architectural feature, every improvement he and Dora had lovingly made over 37 years of marriage. Someone had been very thorough, very prepared. By evening, after cleaning up the mess Lila had left behind, Wendell found himself moving through rooms that suddenly felt different. The living room, where a framed photograph of Lila's college graduation smiled down from the mantelpiece, triggered a memory sharp as broken glass. "Dad, I know the tuition is expensive, but Stanford is Stanford. This is my future we're talking about. $200,000. He'd written that check without hesitation, proud that his daughter had earned admission to such a prestigious institution. She'd hugged him afterward, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "I'll make you proud, Dad, I promise." In the kitchen, another memory surfaced as he prepared his solitary dinner. The marble island where he now stood alone had once been surrounded by 20 teenagers celebrating Lila's 18th birthday. The red BMW convertible in the driveway, her surprise gift, had cost $50,000. "Dad, you didn't! Oh my God, you actually bought it!" She'd scream with delight, jumping into his arms like she had as a little girl. The dining room held the ghost of her wedding reception. $80,000 for a single day. Flowers, photographers, a band, catering for 200 guests. Dora had worried it was too extravagant, but Wendell had insisted their only child deserved perfection. "Nothing's too good for our Lila," he'd told his wife. "She only gets married once." Now, as he settled into Dora's favorite rocking chair, the one piece of furniture he couldn't bear to change, Wendell began adding numbers in his head. College tuition, cars, the wedding, the down payment on their first apartment, countless smaller amounts over the years, emergency loans that were never repaid, Christmas gifts that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. How much had he given freely? How much had she taken for granted? The realization settled over him like a familiar coat. This wasn't about his welfare, or his loneliness, or his supposed inability to care for himself. This was about money she believed she was owed, money she'd been expecting, planning for, counting on. Wendell sat in Dora's chair until well past midnight, thinking about entitled children and the parents who created them. When he finally went to bed, sleep eluded him. Instead, he stared at the ceiling and began forming a plan. Saturday morning's coffee had barely cooled when the phone began its insistent summons. By the 15th ring, something crystallized in Wendell's mind. This wasn't random persistence. This was orchestrated, planned. He lifted the receiver with the calm of a man who had finally understood the game being played. The conversation with Tane had revealed more than his son-in-law realized. The casual references to his loneliness, the suggestions about his mental state, the pointed comments about living in the past, these weren't spontaneous observations. They were carefully chosen words, building a narrative, a legal narrative. As Wendell hung up the phone, he understood with crystalline clarity that Monday would indeed bring documentation. Not simply real estate papers, but something far more sinister. Papers questioning his competency, his ability to manage his own affairs, his fitness to control his own property. His own daughter was preparing to have him declared mentally unfit. He sat very still in the morning light, processing this betrayal. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached for his address book and began planning his counterattack. After all, if they wanted to play legal games, they'd chosen to challenge a man who'd built his fortune by understanding exactly how such games were won. Monday brought the illusion of normalcy. I sorted through the morning mail at my kitchen table, the familiar ritual of bills and advertisements providing comfort after the weekend's unsettling revelations. Coffee steamed beside me, newspaper folded to the business section, everything in its proper place. Then I saw my address staring back at me from unfamiliar letterhead. Property Inquiry, 1247 Beverly Drive. The real estate agency logo looked official enough, but I'd never contacted them, never contacted anyone about selling. My hands trembled slightly as I tore open the first envelope. "Congratulations on listing your beautiful Beverly Hills property with Henderson Realty Solutions." The words blurred. I set the letter down carefully, reached for the second envelope. Same address, different agency. Thank you for choosing Premier Property Partners for your urgent sale needs. Urgent sale needs. My urgent sale needs. The newspaper forgotten, I moved to Dora's old computer in the study. My fingers felt clumsy on the keyboard as I typed my own address into the search bar. The page loaded slowly, each second stretching like hours. There it was, my house, Dora's garden, our bedroom window gleaming in professional photographs I'd never authorized. Motivated seller, must sell quickly, blazed across the top in red letters. Listed price, $995,000, nearly $750,000 below market value. I clicked through the photos with growing horror. The winter garden, where Lila had confronted me. The living room, where her graduation picture smiled from the mantelpiece. Even Dora's private study, captured in crisp detail for strangers to evaluate. VIP client special processing available, the listing promised in bold text. Qualified buyers with fast financing can close in 72 hours. 72 hours, 3 days. My hands had steadied now, the initial shock crystallizing into something colder. I picked up the phone and dialed the number from the listing. Henderson Realty, this is Marcus speaking. How can I help you today? I'm interested in your property on Beverly Drive. My voice sounded normal, conversational. The one listed at $995. Oh yes, beautiful house. Owners are selling urgently. Price is slightly reduced for a quick deal. Marcus's enthusiasm felt rehearsed. Are you pre-qualified for financing? What about documentation? All ownership rights clear? Absolutely, sir. We have special processing for VIP clients. Everything completely legal. The owner is eager to close quickly. Family circumstances, you understand. Family circumstances. Yes, I was beginning to understand perfectly. I see. And the owner has fully authorized this sale? Of course, all paperwork is in order. Would you like to schedule a viewing? I should mention, we have several other interested parties, so timing is crucial. I hung up without answering. The silence in the kitchen felt different now, not peaceful, but ominous. I looked at the framed photograph of Lila on the wall, the one from her high school graduation. She wore her Honor Society pin and the pearl necklace Dora had given her for her 18th birthday. The girl in the photograph smiled back at me, innocent and trusting. That girl was gone. The photograph kept smiling while my world crumbled around it. I found myself pacing through the house like a caged animal, each room triggering memories that now felt like evidence in a criminal case. The study where Lila's Stanford diploma gleamed in its expensive frame, $200,000 in tuition I'd paid without question. The garage where I'd surprised her with that red BMW convertible for her 18th birthday, $50,000 for a car she'd totaled 6 months later. My breathing came faster with each calculation. The dining room held the memory of her wedding reception, $80,000 for a single day of celebration. The living room contained the ghost of that conversation about her first apartment's down payment, $75,000 I'd handed over. Because, Dad, if you really love me, you'll help me start my adult life right. Nearly $500,000. That's what I'd invested in my daughter's happiness over the years. And now, she wanted to steal the last thing connecting me to Dora. I stopped pacing in Dora's study, gripping the back of her writing chair until my knuckles whitened. The leather still held a faint trace of her perfume. White shoulders, the same scent she'd worn since our honeymoon. 37 years of marriage, and I could still smell her presence in this room. Lila wanted to sell this, wanted to hand over Dora's sanctuary to strangers who'd see only square footage and resale value. The rage built slowly, methodically, like pressure in a steam engine. I'd spent my entire adult life being reasonable, being generous, being the father who never said no. Even when Lila's demands became more frequent, more entitled, more disconnected from gratitude or genuine need. Stanford tuition when state schools would have served just as well. Designer cars when reliable transportation was the actual requirement. A wedding reception that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Down payments and emergency loans and Christmas gifts that grew more expensive each year. I'd been an enabler, a fool who'd confused financial generosity with good parenting. But this was theft, pure and simple. I sat down at Dora's desk and pulled out a legal pad, my hands steady again now that purpose had replaced shock. The pen felt familiar in my fingers as I began making notes, organizing my thoughts into the kind of strategic plan that had built my business empire. Names, phone numbers, resources, legal options. 3 pages later, I reached for the phone. The number I dialed belonged to someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, but our friendship had survived 4 decades of life's complications. Kel? My voice carried the weight of old friendship and new necessity. It's Wendell. I need your help. 3 days of careful planning followed. 3 days passed in a blur of phone calls, research, and preparation. By Thursday evening, I'd returned to something resembling my normal routine, or at least the appearance of it. I sat in my living room reading the newspaper, coffee cooling on the side table, evening light filtering through windows that Dora had chosen for their perfect western exposure. The sound of a key in the front door announced Lila's arrival. No knock, no courtesy call, just the assumption that she could enter my home whenever she pleased. Her heels clicked across the marble with the confidence of someone who believed she'd already won. Dad? Her voice carried forced cheerfulness, the tone she'd used as a teenager when she wanted something expensive. I have good news. She appeared in the living room doorway carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. Behind the bag's calculated casualness, I caught a glimpse of something bulky. A canvas bank bag. I didn't look up from my newspaper. Good evening, Lila. I've been thinking about our conversation Friday. She moved to the coffee table and set down the bag with theatrical precision. About what's best for everyone. The bag landed with the soft thud of bundled cash. I turned a page of the business section, maintaining the same measured calm that had served me well in countless negotiations. Dad, I know change is hard, but I've found a solution that works for everyone. Her voice grew more animated as she unzipped the bag. Look, money. Neat stacks of $100 bills held together with bank bands. She arranged them on the coffee table like a poker player revealing a winning hand. $10,000, she announced. Your share. I folded the newspaper carefully and set it aside. The money sat between us like an accusation, crisp bills that represented her evaluation of my life's work. Interesting. I leaned forward to examine the stacks. From $1,200,000, my share is $10,000. The rest goes to investments and our needs. Her justification came too quickly, too rehearsed. Emma's education fund, our mortgage, practical things that benefit the whole family. I picked up one of the stacks, feeling the weight of genuine currency. And where exactly am I supposed to live? I've found you a lovely senior community in Pasadena. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, activities center. Much more appropriate than rattling around in this big house alone. She spoke faster now, nervous energy replacing confidence. The community has a waiting list, but they'll have an opening Sunday. Sunday. I set the money down precisely where I'd found it. This coming Sunday. New owners move in then. I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. But I had to do this. You'd never agree voluntarily. She was right about that. I wouldn't have agreed to betrayal, to theft disguised as family concern, to having my life dismantled by someone I'd loved unconditionally for 34 years. You're absolutely right, I said quietly. I wouldn't have agreed. Something in my tone made her pause. She'd expected anger, tears, desperate bargaining, the emotional chaos that would let her play the role of reasonable daughter, making difficult decisions for an unreasonable father. My calm seemed to unnerve her. Dad, this really is for the best. You'll see. The community has other people your age, social activities, medical care nearby, and the money from the sale will ensure you're comfortable for the rest of your life. $10,000, I repeated. How generous. Plus, the community has very reasonable monthly fees. The money will last much longer than you think. Her voice carried the patronizing tone she might use with a confused child. I stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. 3 days, you said. The movers come Saturday. I've already arranged everything. She gathered the money back into the bag with quick, efficient movements. I hate that it came to this, but sometimes families have to make hard choices. Hard choices. I walked to the window and looked out at Dora's garden, where the evening light painted everything in shades of gold. Yes, I suppose they do. Lila lingered in the doorway, perhaps expecting more protest, more emotion, more of something that would justify what she'd done. When I remained silent, she shifted uncomfortably. I'll call you tomorrow to finalize the details, she said finally. I nodded without turning around. The front door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with $10,000 and 3 days to disappear from my own life. I smiled for the first time in a week. 3 days. Plenty of time. The sound of Lila's engine faded into the Beverly Hills evening, leaving behind only the whisper of sprinklers across perfectly manicured lawns. I stood at the front window, watching her taillights disappear around the corner, the bundle of cash still warm in my hand from our encounter. $10,000, her evaluation of my life's work. I moved through the house with purpose now, turning on specific lights, the study lamp, the kitchen pendant, the reading light beside Dora's chair. Each click of each switch felt deliberate, a ritual of preparation rather than mere habit. The curtains were already drawn, privacy ensured for what would come next. From the desk drawer in my study, I retrieved my personal cell phone, not the landline Lila might expect me to use, but the device I'd kept charged and ready for 3 days of careful planning. The number I dialed required no consultation with my address book. 40 years of friendship had burned those digits into memory. 2 rings. Then a familiar voice, steady and warm. Wendell? Kel's greeting carried the weight of expectation. I've been waiting. It's begun, I said simply. She came tonight with the money. 10,000? Professional disgust colored his words. From a $1.2 million theft? Her exact calculation. I settled into Dora's chair, feeling the leather conform to my body like an embrace. She expects me gone by Sunday morning. Are the documents ready on your end? Kel's voice shifted into lawyer mode, crisp and efficient. Filed yesterday morning, exactly as we discussed. My own voice had found a confidence I hadn't felt in years. Everything's in place. Good, the timing will be perfect then. A pause, and then the warmth returned to his tone. How are you holding up, old friend? This can't be easy. I looked across the room at Dora's photograph, her eyes sparkling with the mischief that had first attracted me 50 years ago. She'd always said that justice delayed wasn't justice denied. It was justice perfected. I'm ready, I told him. More ready than I've been since she died. Then we'll see this through properly. Sunday morning, as planned. Sunday morning. I smiled for the first time in a week, a real smile that reached all the way to my bones. She thinks she's coming to collect the keys from a defeated old man. She's going to get quite a surprise instead. After hanging up, I remained in Dora's chair for a long moment, savoring the sensation of wheels set in motion, of plans falling into place with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. The house felt different now, not like a prison awaiting demolition, but like a fortress preparing for siege. I moved to my desk and began organizing papers with the methodical care of a general reviewing battle plans. Insurance documents, property deeds, financial statements, everything aligned and ready for Sunday's revelation. Tomorrow would bring the final preparations. Friday morning arrived with unusual clarity, the kind of crystalline light that makes Beverly Hills look like a movie set designed to showcase wealth and success. I followed my normal routine with renewed purpose. Coffee brewing, newspaper reading, the ritual watering of Dora's orchids. But underneath the familiar motions ran a current of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. To any neighbor glancing over the garden wall, I appeared exactly as I had every morning for the past 5 years. A widowed gentleman maintaining his established patterns. They couldn't see the transformation occurring beneath the surface, the shift from victim to strategist that had crystallized over 3 days of careful planning. She expects to find empty rooms, I thought, as I deadheaded a particularly stubborn bloom. She'll discover something else entirely. The morning passed in deliberate preparation, disguised as routine. I checked important papers in my study, opened and closed the safe to ensure critical documents remained secure, charged my phone, consulted my address book. Each action served a purpose in Sunday's approaching confrontation. Saturday brought the final coordination call with Kel. His voice carried the calm confidence of a man who'd spent decades navigating complex legal waters. Everything ready? He asked without preamble. Documents in order, timeline confirmed. I stood at the kitchen window, watching a gardening crew manicure the property across the street. You're certain about the legal protections? Absolutely certain. What she's attempted constitutes fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. The evidence is overwhelming. Professional satisfaction colored his words. She's not just losing this battle, Wendell. She's facing serious consequences. And the buyers will arrive exactly as scheduled, 10 o'clock sharp. After hanging up, I spent the remainder of Saturday in quiet reflection, sitting in Dora's chair as evening shadows lengthened across the terrace. Family photographs surrounded me. Lila's childhood, her graduation, even her wedding day when hope still lived in her eyes. I remembered paying for that celebration, believing I was investing in her happiness rather than enabling her sense of entitlement. 40 years of marriage had taught me patience. 35 years of fatherhood had taught me love. Tomorrow, she would learn that both had limits. I laid out my clothes for Sunday, with the care of a soldier preparing for battle. My best suit, the tie Dora had given me for our last anniversary, the cufflinks that had belonged to my father. If this was to be a confrontation about family legacy, I would dress the part. Sleep came easily that night, the deep rest of a man whose conscience was clear and whose plans were sound. Tomorrow would bring resolution. Sunday morning dawned with the golden perfection that only California can deliver. Sunlight streaming across the terrace where I'd arranged my breakfast with military precision, coffee in Dora's finest china, newspaper folded to the business section, everything positioned exactly where she would expect to find chaos and capitulation. Instead, she would find order, control, quiet confidence. I'd showered with particular care, shaved with the precision of a man preparing for an important meeting, dressed in the suit that had seen me through countless business negotiations. If today marked the end of our relationship as father and daughter, at least I would face it with dignity intact. At 9:45, I checked my watch and smiled. Lila had always been punctual when something mattered to her, and today, she believed everything mattered. The sound of her car in the driveway carried its usual arrogance, the expensive engine purring with the confidence of someone who expected to claim victory. Her key turned in the lock with the authority of ownership, her heels clicking across marble with the rhythm of anticipated triumph. But when she reached the terrace, the rhythm faltered. "Dad?" Her voice carried confusion wrapped in designer confidence. "What are you still doing here? I told you. New owners are moving in today." I gestured to the chair across from me, without looking up from my newspaper. "Sit down, daughter. Have some coffee. We'll wait together." "Are you insane?" The words exploded from her with volcanic force. "Where are your things? Where are the suitcases? Where is everything? Why would I pack belongings in my own home?" I folded the paper carefully, meeting her eyes with the calm of a man who held all the cards. "Your home?" She laughed, but the sound held hysteria rather than humor. "Dad, you sold this house. I sold it. The movers, the buyers, they're coming." "Yes," I agreed pleasantly. "They certainly are." Something in my tone made her pause. The confidence that had carried her through the front door began to crack around the edges, revealing the desperation underneath. "I don't understand." She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. The contract, the closing, everything was arranged. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway cut through her panic. Multiple vehicles, by the sound of it, more than would be needed for a simple property transfer. Lila moved toward the sliding glass doors, her designer outfit suddenly looking less like armor and more like costume jewelry. That must be them, the new owners. I remained seated, utterly calm, watching her walk toward a revelation she couldn't possibly anticipate. The cars in the driveway carried more than new owners. They carried justice. The footsteps approaching the front door belonged to Kel Pritchard, and he wasn't alone. Lila swung the door open with a welcoming smile, prepared for grateful buyers, but her expression froze as she found herself facing 3 men in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases instead of moving boxes. "Ms. Dowd?" Kel's voice carried the formal weight of 40 years practicing law. "I'm Calvin Pritchard, legal counsel. These gentlemen are from the district attorney's office." What?" Lila's confidence cracked like ice in warm water. "Where are the buyers? The new owners?" "That's precisely what we're here to discuss." Kel stepped forward, his briefcase clicking open with practiced efficiency. "You're under investigation for suspected real estate fraud." "That's impossible!" The words erupted from her with volcanic force. "I have rights to this house. Inheritance rights." I appeared in the doorway behind her, moving with the calm deliberation of a man who had anticipated this moment for a week. My coffee cup remained steady in my hand as I watched my daughter's world begin to crumble. "Lila," I said quietly, 1 week ago, I transferred this house to a charitable foundation in your mother's name. You cannot sell what I don't own." She whirled to face me, her designer outfit suddenly looking like costume jewelry under stage lights. "But the money, I already took money from the buyers." "Yes," Kel interjected smoothly, producing documents from his briefcase. $995,000 for a non-existent asset. That constitutes criminal fraud under California state law. The blood drained from Lila's face as she stared at the official papers in Kel's hands. Foundation documents, dated 7 days prior to her attempted sale. Property transfer certificates bearing my signature and Dora's photograph. Legal proof that her brilliant scheme had been nothing more than elaborate theft. The Dora Hargrove Memorial Foundation, Kel continued with professional precision, was established to maintain this property as a sanctuary for grieving families. Your father transferred full ownership before any sale negotiations began. Lila's phone trembled in her hands as she tried to process the implications. "This isn't possible. I had the house evaluated. I had contracts prepared. Real buyers with real money for a house you never owned," I said, setting my coffee cup down with the same measured control I'd maintained throughout our entire conflict. "Every dollar you accepted was obtained through fraud." She stumbled backward against the doorframe, her mind racing through calculations that no longer added up. The confident woman who'd arrived expecting victory had been replaced by someone desperately searching for escape routes that didn't exist. "Dad, you can't. This will destroy me." Her voice had shrunk to a whisper. "I'll go to prison. Perhaps you should have considered that possibility before attempting to steal my home." I folded my hands behind my back, watching as the last of her arrogance dissolved into raw panic. Kel cleared his throat diplomatically. "The district attorney's office is prepared to discuss terms, but first we need to address the matter of restitution. $995,000 must be returned immediately." Lila's laugh held no humor, only hysteria. "900,000? I don't have 900,000. Most of it's already spent." "Then you have a very serious problem," I observed. "One that will require very serious solutions. You planned this. You planned all of this." The fury hit her like a physical force, transforming her from panicked victim to raging animal in the space of a heartbeat. "You set me up!" Lila launched herself at me with clawed fingers and wild eyes, 34 years of entitlement exploding into pure rage. "Your own daughter! You set me up!" I stepped aside calmly, letting her momentum carry her past me into the foyer. Kel and his colleagues moved back with professional discretion, giving family drama the space it required while remaining ready to intervene if necessary. "I protected myself from my own daughter," I corrected, straightening my tie with the same composure I'd used to discuss the weather. "Fundamental difference." She spun around, designer heels slipping on marble as tears of fury streamed down her face. "I'll go to prison. I have 2 children. Emma needs braces, college funds. How could you do this to your own grandchildren? You should have considered them before committing fraud." Each word fell between us like stones into still water. I wasn't the one who chose crime over family. Her phone emerged from her purse with desperate urgency, fingers trembling as she dialed Tane's number. The conversation lasted 30 seconds, long enough for him to understand the scope of the disaster, not long enough for him to offer solutions that didn't exist. "Dad, please!" She collapsed to her knees on the foyer's expensive tile, makeup running in streaks down her cheeks. "I'll return the money. I'll find it somehow." $995,000? I raised an eyebrow with genuine curiosity. "From where? You told me last week you could barely make ends meet." "I'll take loans, mortgages, anything." "Against what collateral? Your house is already underwater. Your car is financed. Your credit cards are maxed out." I'd done my research during those 3 days of preparation. "Where exactly do you plan to find $1 million? Kel stepped forward with documents that made her situation even bleaker. "Ms. Dowd, the buyers you defrauded are demanding full restitution plus damages. They're threatening additional civil suits for emotional distress and legal fees." Lila rocked back on her heels, staring at legal papers that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics for all the comfort they provided. The confident woman who'd thrown spare keys on my coffee table had been replaced by someone who understood, perhaps for the first time, that actions carried consequences. "I thought you were weak," she whispered through her tears. "I thought you were just a lonely old man who couldn't face reality." "Reality has many faces," I replied. "You're looking at one of them now." Her sobbing grew quieter, more exhausted than emotional. The fight was draining out of her like air from a punctured balloon, leaving behind only the hollow recognition of complete defeat. "What happens now?" she asked finally, her voice barely audible. I looked down at my daughter, this woman I'd raised, educated, supported, and loved, now broken on the floor of the home she'd tried to steal. For the first time since this confrontation began, I felt something other than cold satisfaction. Perhaps we should talk. I sat down beside my broken daughter on the marble floor, setting aside the victory I'd earned for the mercy she might still deserve. "I didn't want this, Lila." My voice carried 40 years of fatherhood, softer now than it had been since she'd burst through my door demanding change. "You forced my hand." She looked up at me with eyes that finally held recognition instead of entitlement. "I needed the money so badly, Dad. Emma's school, the mortgage, everything was falling apart." "Needing and wanting are different things," I said gently. "You wanted the easy solution. You needed to learn the difference." Kel maintained respectful distance while we talked, but his presence reminded us both that legal consequences couldn't be wished away through family reconciliation. "This house isn't just real estate, Lila." I gestured toward the rooms where we'd built 37 years of memories. "It's where your mother and I were happy, where you took your first steps, where she read you bedtime stories in the nursery that's now my office." For the first time, she looked around the foyer as if seeing it clearly. The chandelier she'd climbed under as a child, the staircase where she'd posed for prom pictures, the dining room where we'd celebrated every Christmas morning until Dora died. "I was ready to help you financially," I continued, "but I wouldn't surrender the last connection I have to her. This foundation ensures the house stays in the family while helping other people who've lost what we lost." "A foundation?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, makeup smearing, but dignity slowly returning. "The Dora Hargrove Memorial Foundation provides counseling and support for families dealing with loss. It needs someone to manage daily operations, handle the budget, coordinate with volunteers." I paused, watching her process the implications. "The salary is modest but honest. $40,000 annually, plus benefits." Her eyes widened as she understood what I was offering. You'll give me a chance after everything I've done?" "One chance," I clarified. "The last one. You'll work directly with grieving families, learning what loss actually means. You'll understand why this house matters more than its market value." Kel stepped forward with additional documents. "The district attorney is willing to consider community service and restitution in lieu of prison time, provided full cooperation and immediate enrollment in financial counseling." Lila's tears had shifted from desperation to something approaching gratitude. "I'll have to sell everything, the car, jewelry, liquidate retirement accounts." "Probably." I helped her to her feet, surprised by how frail she felt after years of seeming so formidable. "But you'll keep your family intact. Your children will have their mother, and you'll have the chance to show them what real values look like." She looked toward Dora's photograph on the living room mantel, seeing her mother perhaps for the first time in years rather than just inheritance potential. "She would have been so disappointed in me," Lila whispered. "She would have been proud of you for accepting responsibility," I corrected. "That's what we do now. We start over and we do better." Kel began arranging paperwork for signatures while I put my arm around my daughter's shoulders. Justice had been served, but mercy remained possible. The house would stay in the family, Dora's memory would be honored, and Lila would learn the difference between earning and taking. Outside, the Beverly Hills morning continued its golden perfection, sunlight streaming through windows that would remain ours for as long as the foundation endured. Some things, I'd learned, were worth fighting for. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.